Now, there was disappointment in government circles when officials of the Finance Ministry were forced to postpone a critical meeting to China to negotiate a debt relief. But in the last couple of days, government appears to have caught a break. Top officials of the Chinese Exim Bank flew into town over the weekend for showdown talks over Ghana's indebtedness to China. Ghana owes China $1.7 billion, and without a deal from China, government will be unable to access the critically needed $3 billion bailout from the IMF. Ghana's Western creditors have made it clear they will not help if Ghana cannot strike a deal with China. Here is the German ambassador to Ghana, Daniel Kroll, speaking at a news conference last week.
Well, I think the government has taken the right steps, has reached out very actively. I don't see anything that anybody else could have done better. It is really at this point of time, it is really the question on how to convince particular China to come to the table. That is the key question right now. Because all the others, I mean, the Paris Club members have agreed, they are ready, but again, they are not willing to lower the request to Ghana, and with this financing the debts of China. I mean, that must be understandable for everybody. So we are ready to negotiate, but only if all the other creditors are willing, are taking up their responsibility in the same way.
He also laid out a series of conditions Ghana must first meet.
Well, of course, it depends very much on what kind of expenditures you're looking at, and there are certain. I'm convinced this is true for if I look at the budget of the German Foreign Ministry of the German government. I'm convinced there are important parts that can be cut without hurting the economic development, and I'm convinced, without going into details, this also is true for Ghana. There are certainly expenditures that can be lowered substantially and make an important impact. And it has to be part of the package. I mean, I cannot go out to the international community, say I need help, but I'm not willing to cut my own budget expenditures. I have to be careful not to cut in the social expenditures that are destroying lives and families. I have to be very careful not to take measures that might negatively impact the economic growth. But I'm convinced there are many expenditures that could be looked very, very carefully at and could be lowered substantially without harming the economic growth path.
Well, President Akufo-Addo has in the last 24 hours been meeting representatives of the diplomatic community in Ghana, and he did not mince words asking for their help with the Chinese negotiations. He, however, failed to address the key conditions the German ambassador laid out, including a reduction in government expenditure.
We acknowledge the reality of the fact that our economy is in considerable difficulty. The budget drawn for the 2022 fiscal year was thrown out of gear, disrupting our balance of payments and debt sustainability, and further exposing the structural weaknesses of our economy. We have gone to the International Monetary Fund to repair in the short term our public finances and restore our balance of payments, while we continue to work on the medium to long-term structural changes that are at the heart of our goal of constructing a resilient, robust Ghanaian economy and building a Ghana beyond aid. Just as we managed to achieve a staff-level agreement with the fund in record time in December last year, whose terms we are systematically fulfilling, including the difficult but ultimately highly successful process of the domestic debt exchange program. I'm confident that with the cooperation we are receiving from members of the Paris Club and the People's Republic of China, which has sent a delegation from China's Exim Bank to Accra over the weekend to meet with officials of the Ministry of Finance, we shall be able to go to the board of the fund to conclude finally the agreement by the end of March. This will set the stage for the strong recovery of Ghana's economy. Needless to say, we would hope that all Ghana's friends would weigh in with words of support at the fund.
Well, we've been joined via Zoom by an international relations expert, Ishmael Kwabla, for an interaction on this. Now, grateful that you could join us. What does this development say about our relationship with China?
Thank you very much. It shows that our relations is still a little bit very strong. And of course, well, last time we were calling on our international friends to help us talk with China. It's one of those complexities, particularly in this debt restructuring across the globe, that the Chinese take a little bit more time to come on the board. But then again, last week I said, the time we were trying to fly to China, most of the time, because of the Chinese New Year, you may not necessarily get them. So now that they are coming down to us to negotiate with us, yes, this is the start of the negotiation, and it will take some time to get all the details done. One of the things about Chinese financing is that it is quite easy for them if it is these zero interest rate loans that they quickly write off. But once it comes to the commercial lending, you must understand that China itself is now learning how to deal with this debt restructuring because they have not been lenders for that long. So it's a new process for them to deal with countries that have taken money from them and in this sort of crisis. So they normally go gradually because by their principle, they will say that you cross the river by touching the stone. So they put the leg out there and touch a stone and decide to cross. So it's also an experiment for them. Okay. One of the things that have worked to our advantage now is the fact that China doesn't want to look like that international altar that is virtually derailing international efforts at getting debt relief for poorer nations. So I think that as they are in now, yes, of course, it's a good news for Ghana, but it will still take some time for us to come to an agreement because much of the loan is commercial lending. So we may look at restructuring maybe rather than debt forgiveness. Now, if you look at what they have done to Colombia, they give them they gave them a 2-year moratorium where they froze interest on their loan. So we may be looking at those kind of dynamics. But of course, also talks about, yes, the kind of demand we put on the table and the things that we are ready to take on ourselves. That's very important during this discussion.
But we know that some countries have lost critical installations to China, due to some of these negotiations. Is that something we should expect in the case of Ghana?
I don't think we should expect that because in those instances, it is because those critical installations were actually part of the bigger deals that they signed, and that allowed them to take over in these cases of default. And indeed, if you look at some of those cases where they have to go for critical installation, already they were part of the processes to collecting revenue and so forth and so on. So in that case, it becomes like a trade-off kind of deal. But this situation appears more complex than that because it's a general problem across the third world. Remember, Zambia is also having its own tough time with the Chinese. Sri Lanka had their own tough time. Therefore, it's not as easy as we say that, well, if we default, the Chinese are coming to take over critical installation. Of course, other creditor nations are already back. Now, if you look at the Paris, we appear to be more friendly with them. So I don't think that we are at a stage where we'll be thinking that critical installation will be taken from Ghana. But then again, it depends on how the negotiations go.
Okay, all right. I'm grateful. Thank you so much for joining us on the Joy News Platform.